Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, class. We are going to talk about lifting and moving patients today, which is chapter 3. Let me just get this set. All right. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about protecting yourself, some body mechanics we should be using when we're lifting and moving patients, and the different types of moves, the emergency, the urgent, and the non-urgent moves. Okay, so we'll start out with protecting your body, the body mechanics. Okay, we want to use our proper, we want to lift properly to prevent injury and to help facilitate lifting and moving. This gets a little complicated at times. You are going to find patients in really weird positions, and we kind of have to do a lot of problem solving on these calls to get them safely moved, and you yourself keep yourself safe when trying to get these people out of these awkward situations. All right, so consider the following before lifting any patient: the object, okay, the person. Well, how heavy are they? Is he going to need additional help? These are things to consider when we talk about patient assessment, and we say request additional resources. Usually when we're practicing, we're referring to, do we need ALS? Do we need a helicopter? But this applies to lifting and moving the patient around too. What kind of resources are we going to need? Are we going to need this moving device? Are we going to need additional manpower from an outside agency because we don't have enough people on the scene from our own department? That happens a lot. And some of these bariatric patients, the real big people, requires quite a bit of people. We've had times where it takes 6 of us just to move the patient while we have another 3 get the stretcher underneath them, and there's times that it's really manpower intensive. So these are things you really need to consider as part of your patient assessment. Okay, but again, the object, its weight, whether it would require additional help to lift, your limitations. You have to know what you're able to do. Can you lift this person by yourself or with one other person? Know your own strengths and weaknesses. Okay, and communication. Make a plan and communicate it with your partner or partners. If you have a lot of people, somebody needs to take charge of this scene. You on the head, you on the side, you in the middle, on the left side, right side. Okay, these things need to be coordinated. We can't all just do our own thing. All right. And generally speaking, it's the senior EMT or whoever's in charge of the scene, but that may be you. And at some point it will be you. All right, so rules for lifting: position your feet properly, use your legs, never turn or twist, do not compensate when lifting with one hand. That's tough sometimes, because if you're carrying, say, a Reeve stretcher or a mega mover, and you're just holding on to with one side of your body, you're trying to pull the other way with your back. Back injuries happen all the time, and it's easy to get injured on this job, moving people around. So we really have to be careful when we're moving these people. All right, rules for lifting: keep the weight as close to your body as possible. We want to reach out. We will demonstrate this. We'll be doing lifting and moving, I think tomorrow. Yes, the 29th, we'll be doing some practicing using these devices and lifting and moving. We want to keep the weight as close to the body as possible. Use a stair chair when carrying patient on stairs whenever possible. Generally speaking, we don't like to Reeves people downstairs just because it's difficult. And there's a lot of bending over and lifting this patient while you're bent over, especially if we're doing things like CPR. So we're trying to bag these people at the same time, induce compressions while we're moving them down the stairs. A lot of moving parts. It's very easy for us to get excited in that we're trying to save a life. We need to bag this patient, whatever the case is, that we put ourselves at risk. And like I said, it's very, very easy to do. Here's a picture right here, people moving a patient down the stairs. Ideal. This is textbook. Look at the wide stairs. You got 3 people. You got 2 on the stair chair. You got 1 person behind watching the stairs with his hand on his back. That's all good. A textbook way to do it. We try to do it this way Ideally, again, we have somebody behind the person who's walking backwards with a hand on their back just for support. And then they're going to count. They're going to say, all right, you got 3 steps left. 2, 1, you're on the ground. Okay. If there's any obstacles, you're kind of calling out for them. All right. This is just an example of a guy, excuse me, lifting. You know, he's got both hands grasped around the stretcher there. He's bent at the knees, not at his back. All right. All right, when you're reaching out, keep your back in a locked position. Avoid twisting when reaching. Excuse me. Avoid reaching more than 20 inches in front of the body. So do we all carry a tape measure with us? Of course not. Generally speaking, we don't want to reach too far when we're lifting. This is a challenge when we're moving patients from our stretcher to the hospital bed because the people on the outside, excuse me, have to reach across while lifting the body. The patient, I should say, not the body, sorry. You know, keep your back locked. Don't twist when you're doing this. Try not to go too far. Get more people in there if you need it. Don't try to move these people just by yourself. One on each side is hard. It's hard work, okay? And avoid prolonged reaching when strenuous effort is required. So we don't want to be reached out far away while we're holding them for an extended period of time. We want to do it in one quick motion, moving them over to the stretcher. All right. When pushing or pulling, push rather than pull whenever possible. It's not always possible, but they say less back injuries happen when you're pushing rather than pulling. Keep your back locked in. Keep the line of pull through the center of the body and keep the weight close to the body we talked about. If the weight is below your waist, push or pull from the kneeling position. So if it makes more sense to kneel down when we're moving these patients around, do that. Avoid pushing or pulling overhead, and keep your elbows bent and arms close to your sides. Okay, so that's just some body mechanics stuff that we can do. I think we've all probably heard this at one point in our lives, and they're very important things. Again, this is a job where every patient's going to be in a different position, and they're going to weigh different amounts, and different problems. So we're going to be treating all these patients differently. All these things go into the equation of how we're going to lift and move that patient. All right, so we'll talk about some urgent and non-urgent moves. These will be test questions. Just know the difference between the different types of moves, because there will be questions on the test regarding that. So when do we use emergency moves? Okay, is when the scene is hazardous and care of life-threatening conditions requires repositioning, and you must reach other patients. Okay, so we've got a hazardous scene. We need to move this person now, okay? Now, this is not an ideal way to move a patient, but we're in this situation here. The single guy is dragging this kid down the stairs. There's probably some type of fire or thing of that nature. Something dangerous going on, and we just need to get this person moved right now. Okay, we're not taking all the considerations in effect. So again, there's a closed drag as an option for us. The incline drag, always head first. I mean, we're not going to spin around the other way. That wouldn't really work. We're not going to grab by his feet and drag him because his head is going to be bouncing off the stairs. Some of this is common sense stuff. Firefighter's drag, I've never done this in real life. I don't think that you'll probably ever do it, but it is one. You tie their hands together, the wrists together, and you can drag them across the floor like so. Okay. A blanket drag, you get them on a blanket or a sheet, and you can drag them. All right. You can assist the patient like this. Two rescuer assist. Okay, these are all types of emergency moves. So there's some kind of hazardous condition going on, and we just need to move that person. And whatever their ability, if they're unresponsive, we might have to do the blanket drag like so. Okay, if they're able to walk, but maybe their legs messed up, we just got to get them moved, have them help. Okay, these are just options. So these are emergency moves. So then we get into our urgent moves. Okay, so when would we do an urgent move? The required treatment can be performed only if the patient is moved. So we can't treat the patient unless they're moved. Okay, factors at the scene cause patient decline. So there might not be a hazardous situation going on, but you can't get to that person. They need CPR right now, just for example. They have no pulse. You need to move this patient to the floor so you can do your compressions and your bag valve and all those things that we do. But we can't do it in the current position. So we're going to use an urgent move, get them moved real quick down to the position that we need them. Okay. We can move a patient onto a long board. We talked about this in class. Last week I was not feeling well. So it must have been the week before we did that. But we talked about the long board. We use that if in an immediate threat to life and suspicion of spinal injury. We're going to roll them onto one side, slide the board underneath, and log roll them back onto the board. Okay. Then we're going to lift that backboard onto the stretcher, and 9 times out of 10 now, we don't secure that board to the stretcher. We remove the board from the patient. And there's some ways to do that, and we'll go over that in class, and we'll actually demonstrate how to remove the board once they're on the stretcher. Rapid extrication is a type of urgent move used when taking time to immobilize the patient with a short backboard or vest before patient move may cause a deadly delay. Okay, so maybe in this situation, they're in a car, and ideally, if the patient was responsive and the car isn't on fire and we want to put a short board on them, the KED, which I don't know that we've talked about yet. We'll talk about it a little bit later in this section. Ideally, that would be the way that you immobilize the patient, but we need to get them out of the car now for whatever reason. Okay, so we can slide them out into the backboard. We want to try to stabilize the spine manually as it's moved onto the board. So we're going to hold the head and neck. Maybe they don't have a collar on yet, but we're going to provide manual stabilization of the neck until we can get the collar on them and get them properly secured. Okay, and then we have our non-urgent moves. So we have a stable patient. No immediate life threats. Patient can be assessed, treated, and moved in normal way. Take all precautions not to aggravate existing conditions. So this is 8 out of 10 calls we go to, probably patient stable, somewhat stable. We can kind of take our time in figuring out the best, safest way to move the patient. Whoop, too far, sorry. Why is it doing that? Okay. Patient carrying devices. Okay, so there's a lot of different patient carrying devices. We'll go over a few of them, the most common ones that most of us have. So we'll first start with the wheeled stretchers. Okay, we have power stretchers, we have manual stretchers, we have bariatric stretchers. They're rated to carry patients weighing 800 pounds or more. Power stretcher is kind of generally what everybody has now. Not everybody. The ones we use at the college are manual stretchers, where you have to physically lift the entire stretcher up and the patient, and you have to pull the lever with your hand, and then you release the lever. We'll practice all this using the manual stretcher. As I kind of tell you guys many, many times throughout class, always be familiar with what you have in your department, because we all have maybe slightly different devices. Generally speaking, everybody in this county has Stryker stretchers, and most of them are powered, but they're fancy. You press a button and it comes out. And if we get a chance, we'll show you in Jamestown here, we have the power load system. It'd be not everybody has those, but they're pretty fancy. Maybe if we get a chance, we can have our ambulance come down and just give a quick demonstration of how that system works so you guys can see it. But we'll be practicing on the manual ones. And then, of course, the bariatric stretchers are wider, a little bit wider, and they're made to carry more weight. The wheeled stretcher is carried on every ambulance. That's a Stryker right there. This is a Furno. I've never actually seen one of these Furnos in real life. It's another big company out there that makes patient carrying devices. Generally speaking, like I said, in this county, most of us have, I think all of us have Strykers. Bariatric stretcher here. So they have a whole system with the ramps and the trolley system there. If you have really, really, really heavy patients and you don't think they're going to fit on your stretcher, or if they're over the weight limit, if you look at the side of your stretcher, it'll say how many pounds are on it'll accept. And I think it's generally speaking, they're around 650 pounds, which is a lot. But if you have somebody bigger than that, which is possible, we really have to find who in this county has a bariatric stretcher. I know All-Star has one. I think, don't quote me on this, I thought Fluvanna might have one, but that's things that you need to know with your neighboring departments, who has these, just in case you have that type of patient. Okay, so that's the stretcher. We'll talk about stair chairs, useful where stretchers cannot be easily maneuvered. This is probably the second most common device that you will use on your ambulance is a stair chair. It's a great device, makes moving patients up and down stairs so easy, okay? And we will practice using the stair chair when we get back together in class. We have our long boards and our short boards. Long board is the backboard that we practiced on last week. We don't really use the short boards a whole lot. But we're talking about the KED. We'll get into that a little bit later. But yes, so we have our long boards and our short boards. Here's a picture of a stair chair. It's pretty simple. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse cursor or not, but we have a handle up here that moves up and down. We have a couple handles here that come out, a couple straps. The straps will go over the patient's shoulders and across like this. And the patient's feet goes on this yellow bar down here, and they get strapped in. And then these handles here extend out too, if you need them to. And then there's tracks on the back side here, and that helps you actually slide the patient down the stairs. And there's little clutches or friction devices inside the tracks that slow it down, so it doesn't just roll quickly down the stairs. It actually goes down real slow. So it's a neat device, and we will practice it. Here's an example of a short board. Don't really use these a whole lot. Long boards, we practiced on these the other day. We practice on the wooden one. We have plastic ones as well. The plastic ones are nice because you can actually put those through an x-ray machine. So if you have a patient who's really battered, and we did talk about this other day in class, generally speaking, we don't leave them on a backboard, but we can if we really think it's necessary. These plastic boards can go through, and as long as you're using the spider straps, not the clip-on metal ones, you can put this through a x-ray machine while the patient's still on it, and it's a patient moving device. It might behoove you to leave them on one of these boards on the rare occasion. Okay, other types of stretchers, portable scoop stretcher. That's one we have. That's a good device we will practice with too. I don't know if there's a picture ahead of the scoop stretcher, but it's pretty neat. Basket stretcher, you think like a Stokes basket that you might have in your department for getting people out of like technical rescue situations. Flexible stretchers, and vacuum mattress. I've never actually seen one of these before. This is a KED. I've seen this called a short board as well, but this is a KED, Kendrick extrication device. I think that's technically the brand of it, but it's a vest type. This is for getting people out of cars. We'll practice on this a little bit. We won't spend too much time. There is a process in how to put it on, but it's good for getting people out of a car or in a seated position, I should say. Okay, this is a scoop stretcher right here. These little clips at the end, the metal part, they will detach, so you can actually open it up. You can completely disassemble it on two sides and slide them together under the patient. You could kind of do it like scissors. You could open up one end and clip it together. It's a good tool. It actually doesn't get used a whole lot. I mean, we don't use it. We have them in the city. It's something we don't really use a whole lot, but it is a great device. I don't know if that's just a habit or what, but take advantage of these things if you have them on your ambulances. This is a basket stretcher. Again, it's like a Stokes basket. I think Stokes might just be the brand. I don't know. Flexible stretcher, so it's collapsible. Okay, I guess I have seen these before. This isn't something that generally many people carry. And then a vacuum mattress maybe uses to transport. I've never seen one of these before. there's a lot of devices out there that aren't necessarily required that we carry. We need moving devices, of course, stretchers and backboards and that kind of stuff. But there's certain commercial devices like this one that aren't necessarily required. If your department wants to buy them because it's a cool tool, God bless you. So you're going to strap the patient in here, and then you're going to withdraw the air. And then when you withdraw the air, all right, sorry guys, we're learning together here. So this thing has a little bit of air inside of it. So the patient lays on it and it kind of conforms to their body. And then while they're laying on it, you suck the air out, and that creates, this device will kind of fill in the voids. And then you can move them. So think about it, something for you guys to think about. How do you choose the appropriate patient carrying device? What is the appropriate, so again, like I showed you guys the Reeve stretcher the other day. That has little wooden boards in it that keep a rigid, keep a rigid surface for the patient to lay on. Whereas the Mega Mover that I explained to you guys, or the sheet, something like that, will flex and move all over the place. Can you get the Reeves in there? Do you need something more like a sheet? This is the problem solving that we see on every single call that we go on. Okay, so how do we move them on to the carrying devices? We did this in class, breeze through this. If they have a suspected spinal injury, we want to immobilize the head, neck, and spine before the move. So we're going to put a collar on them. And we're going to perform manual stabilization too. Okay, again, the rigid collar. And we're going to maintain that stabilization until the patient is fully immobilized. If they don't have a spinal injury, we can use an extremity lift. So I grab under their arms, you grab their legs. That's pretty common, no problem. We get them onto the stretcher that way. There's a picture of an extremity carry. Patient with so direct ground lift. So if they're laying on the ground, we can lift them from the ground to the stretcher. We're going to lower our stretcher all the way down so we don't have to lift the patient too high. And we're going to move them like so. Okay, draw sheet method, direct carry method. So the draw sheet, we can put a sheet under the patient, similarly how we put them on the board. We're going to log roll them one direction. We're going to shove that sheet underneath them, roll them back. Everybody grabs a corner of the sheet, move them. This is how we would move a person from a stretcher. I think they're moving from the hospital bed to the stretcher in this picture. But we can just slide them right across. So you roll up the sheet. You should at least have at least 4 people on this move right here. There should be somebody on the right side to grab as well. And they're going to lift up just a little bit, and you're just going to slide them right on over. And this one here, it looks like they actually reached under her legs. Okay, recovery position. So one of the positions we might put the person in, depending on what's going on with them, we can strap them down in the recovery position, which is just on their side. It makes it easier to control patient's airway, especially if they're vomiting. Positioning for shock. We talk about shock an awful lot in this class, which is hypoperfusion, right? All right. The way we position those patients is part of the treatment. So when we ask you, how do you treat a patient for shock, one of them will be how you position them, okay? Place them in the supine position, which is laying down flat on their back. And we're gonna, do not note this. We do raise their legs, okay? We don't lower their head. We do, I gotta change this slide, and I'm very sorry. We do raise their legs, we elevate their feet, and we keep them warm. That's how we position for shock. So we raise their legs, lay them down flat, raise their legs, keep them warm, okay? I gotta change this slide when we're done here. There was a time, and the reason it says do not do this stuff is because there was a time where you would lower the head and raise the legs. They don't want us to lower the head anymore, but we still do raise the legs, okay? Transferring the patient to a hospital stretcher. So now we're at the hospital with our patient. How do we get them into the stretcher? All right, we're gonna have to move them. Here's a good example here. We got 4 people. We're going to move this patient over to the hospital bed. Now, you see how this guy in the blue here is reaching across? That's a little far for us to be reaching, and that's what I was trying to tell you guys. When we move patients to and from a stretcher, sometimes you're going to be the guy or gal who has to reach across. We try to limit that. We try to make these quick moves, but keep your back straight. Don't lift too much and too long. If you need more people, get more people. All right, especially when you're in the hospital. Nurses, all the nursing staff and all them, they're very busy, okay? But there's plenty of people in that facility that can help you move if you really need it, okay? All right, position the raised ambulance cot to the hospital stretcher. So we want to keep them just about even, maybe even a little bit higher. Hospital personnel then adjust their stretcher, raise or lower the head. So we want our stretcher and our hospital bed to have, have the same head position. If you're laying down flat, obviously we're going to lower it, and vice versa. Okay. You and the hospital personnel gather the sheet on either side. Okay. And pull it taut to transfer the patient securely. Okay. So look, see what we're doing here. We all have 4 people on this. The sheet's rolled up. We're going to slide it into the other bed. See how this guy here in the blue, he's kind of reached across. Sometimes you kind of have to do that. Make sure the patient's centered and the rails are raised. There's a picture of that. So right here on the side of the hospital beds, all you have to do is pull them up. You just pull the rails up and they lock in place. Don't walk away from your patient unless those rails are up, especially if they have some kind of altered mental status or moving around, they're unresponsive. You don't want your patient to roll out of that bed after you move them in there, okay? So make sure the rails are up before you walk away. All right, quick chapter review. The process of lifting and moving patients is a task that requires planning, proper equipment, and careful attention to body mechanics to prevent injury to your patient and to yourself. The most important rule of lifting is to lift with your legs, not your back. Keep your feet shoulder width apart and knees bent. Rules for lifting are for patients as well as equipment. The stretchers get very heavy, especially the power lift systems. They're nice because you push the button and the legs go up, but you still have to maneuver that device. You still have to lift it at times. You still have to help. So those stretchers are a lot more heavy. So again, and we have our jump bags and our life packs and all these things that we have. That stuff really adds up weight. It's heavy. Emergency moves are those that may aggravate spinal injuries and therefore are reserved for life-threatening situations. Urgent moves are used when the patient must be moved quickly, but there is time to provide quick temporary consideration towards preventing or aggravating spinal injury. So again, I just want to hit on this because you guys do need to know the difference between those 3 kinds of moves. Emergency moves are those that may aggravate spinal injuries, but we're not considering C-spine injuries because there is a life-threatening situation going on, okay? An urgent move is used when you have to quickly move, but you can consider their C-spine. So there's no hazardous, the house isn't on fire. House isn't about to explode in an urgent move, but you got to move them quickly to treat them properly. And I always, whenever I think of this, the one that I think of is somebody went into cardiac arrest on the toilet and they fall off the toilet and now they're wedged between the tub and the toilet and you need to do CPR on them. Okay, you have to move them quickly, but the house isn't on fire, if that makes sense. Non-urgent moves are normal ways of moving a patient to a stretcher and performing a complete on-scene assessment and completing any needed spinal stabilization and mobilization. Positioning the patient for transport should take into account the patient's comfort, medical needs, and safety. Okay, so non-urgent moves are just your normal stable patient. Okay, know the difference between these 3 kinds of moves. Remember the importance of correctly lifting and moving techniques on every call. Protect your patient and protect yourself from injury to maintain a long and positive EMS experience. How nice. Remember, the proper lifting technique is an important wellness strategy. This is well-being of the EMT type stuff, okay? We need to protect ourselves first. And again, like I told you guys before, if you see any questions on your tests and one of the answers refers to safety, it's probably the right answer. They all might be correct answers, but what do you do first kinds of things, it's always personal safety. Biomechanics and rules of lifting may help prevent injuries associated with lifting. Okay, so we want to use the right biomechanics, we call it. Feet shoulder width apart, don't lift with your back, that kind of stuff. There are many different patient carrying devices. All right, choose a correct device based on the needs of the patient and the movement. Okay, lots of devices we have. I've referred to the Mega Mover with you guys quite a few times. They're cheap. They're great devices. I really like them. Sometimes they're more appropriate than a Reeves or a backboard. So know what you have. Use your problem-solving skills and figure out the best way to move these patients out. Okay. Use proper technique to move patients onto patient-carrying devices and position them for transport based upon their condition. All right, just a couple critical thinking things. Those are in your book. All right, I will see you guys tomorrow night, and we'll go over some lifting and moving stuff. All right.